back to the From Field to Plate podcast. I'm your host, Jeremiah Dowdy, and today I'm hanging out with one of my brothers from another mother's, a gentleman that I met just this year, and forged a bond with pretty quick, as we had 3.5 hour drive to an event we were doing with Traeger. So without further ado, we're going to get into more of that story, more of us hanging out. But Marcus, go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody that is listening.
Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm Marcus Hunnicutt, originally born in the San Fernando Valley, the heat, the valley, the desert, right? So now I actually reside in the San Luis Obispo County. Beautiful weather, as you guys can see. Reason I chose to be outside. I have two beautiful kids. I have an amazing wife. And now I'm currently a banker. I work a 9 to 5, but I'm a weekend warrior on the grill. So now I'm just really learning the content creator world, and I feel like 2024 has been my year so far, with just solidifying a lot of what I want to do and my vision, especially a lot thanks to the time I spent with Jeremiah, which we'll get into. But yeah, so I'm just having fun with it. I'm loving my content creating for like Traeger, Meter, and just kind of getting after it right now. So I'm having a good time.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, I have had on, so far on this podcast, chefs that have been on television, have their own shows, to companies that have products for the outdoors. And I wanted to showcase individuals who a lot of people don't know, but are freaking killing it in the areas that they are. And Marcus is one of those people. He was one of the first people that was on my mind when I was doing this, just for the fact that him and I, so we went to with Traeger, we went to Montana earlier this year and did a thing with Tim Montana for the world famous Wise River Club. And I had the privilege of picking up Marcus at the airport and driving him to this area with me. And I say pick up, I arrived the same time he arrived, and we got to hang out and drive, and get a drive in the snow, because he was a little scared of
Yeah, man. Like when they said like, oh, everybody gets a car, and then I started looking at the weather, and then like pack warm clothes, and I was like, wait a minute, it's snowing, and I've driven in Big Bear like for a taste in the snow, right? But let alone to go somewhere to have to drive 2.5, 3 hours to get somewhere in a state I've never been. So that's when Jeremiah came out. I was like, you know what? I'll ride with this guy. If
yeah.
we go down, we're going down together.
No, and it was fun, and it was cool too in the airport, because if you've ever been to Montana airports, it's just packed full of guys that look just like me, big old beards, white dudes, jeans. And I walked around the corner and saw this beautiful chocolate colored skin man, and I was like, that is who I have to go hang out with. And we kind of hit it off from there. We literally got the rental car, we jumped in it, and we made the 2.5 hour drive, and we just got chit chatting. And you've got a really cool story along, very, very similar to mine, with kind of an injury thrust you into doing something different with your life. So kind of give a little bit of background of that softball game, of that ankle injury, and kind of where it led you to where you are today with the kind of that process.
Yeah, it's crazy. So like before we get to that point, I guess I gotta kind of build up to it, because growing up in the valley, it's hot. And I spent a lot of time at my grandmother's house, because that was almost like the common ground for the Hunnicutt family, right? If you went over there, you were guaranteed to see some cousins, some aunts, some uncles. And it's an old school built house, so there's no central air. It's like 90 to 100 degrees in the summer. So if you eating at my grandmother's house, it was really only a few different ways: out the microwave, you can go pick it up yourself, or it was grilled, right? Because you wasn't gonna be the person to warm up the house during the summer. And so that's really when my love of barbecue came into play. And I will tell you, the first time a smoked meat changed my life, my dad went to Cordon Bleu, and I grew up like in a split custody situation. My dad was always in my life, but I grew up in my mom's household, but my dad was always around. And so when they did the split custody thing, every other weekend I was with my dad. So once he graduated, we cooked every time I was with him, right? And so once he got out of school, he just took over all the family holidays. Like, look, I got this. Nobody's cooking, right? Because we always had them few people that really couldn't cook, but they still contributed. So he's like, I got it. And so when I showed up, I'll put this out there. He calls me Boo Man, because he said I look like Boo Boo the bear when I was a baby. And that's been stuck with me forever. So he's like, hey, Boo Man, you got to try this turkey. And at that point, I was like, man, I don't want turkey. It was always cooked like the old school style, and the oven bag came out. No matter how much gravy or cranberry sauce you put on it, it was dry, and that's just what it is. So, and he knew that, so he was like, "You got to try this." Right, so he comes back in with his gloved hands and he just throws it down. And I'm like, dude, you gave me ham. And he's like, no, dude, that's hickory smoked turkey that I've been working on since yesterday. And I'm like, wait, what? Like from that moment on, I was just mind blown, right? Like
Yeah.
a smoker was able to take something that I absolutely hated, didn't care if I ever ate it again, to something I'm like, damn, this is good, right? And so when I met my wife and I took her over to my grandmother's house, she was borderline vegetarian at the time. She didn't really eat ribs, she didn't eat meat. And so she shows up and we're having this barbecue, and we were known to have just nothing but meat, no sides, except for like the store bought potato salad. And so she's looking at me like, this is what y'all doing?
Yeah.
And long story short, like she started to ask me, so what they barbecuing this weekend? Can we go to your grandmother's house? And she immediately started to get addicted to like the food and the environment and just the feeling. So that's kind of what I grew up in. So now you fast forward to 2019, me and my family move out to the Central Coast. I'm away from my family, and I'm trying to fit in, right? Like I'm trying to be part of the cool kid crew. And my brother-in-law had a softball team, and now I grew up playing football. I'm a butterball, like I'm a big dude. I don't belong on the softball field, but
Mm.
we have fun with
Yeah.
it. We have fun with it. And so I was terrible the first season, absolutely terrible. Couldn't get on base, whatever case may be. So I put in a little bit of work in the off season, right, in the summer. Went to the batting cage. And so when the second season came, it's September 13th, 2019. I go out, I get my first base hit, and I'm fired up, right? I run out to first base, and they're looking at me like, "Do you want a runner?" I'm like, "Nah, man, I want a runner. Like, I got this." Meanwhile, I'm out of breath. Like, I'm like the
You're dying.
excitement.
You're dying over in the
I'm
thing going,
dying.
I really wish I could be man enough to ask for a runner.
And I'm like, nope, I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. And so by the time I got to second base, I had already made up my mind. I was like, I can't do this no longer. I'm going home. Like, I'm just going to book it. I'm going home. So around third, I'm going home and I'm like feeling good. I think I got it. The ball passes me. So now I'm too big to be in a pickle, right? So I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Either I'm trucking this guy or I'm going to try to finesse it. Wrong decision. I try to finesse it. I try to swing my ankle in the home base. It gets caught in the dirt. I snap my ankle in two places. Snap, At that moment, like I felt like everything came crashing down. Like I'm in a new environment. I'm trying to fit in. I'm trying to like just get my feet under me. And now I literally just took my feet from under me. You know what I'm saying? It's like craziness. So I went through a lot of BS during my surgery, crazy stuff with the doctor, insurance, stuff like that. So it was a 4-month stretch that I was off my feet. I ended up being like on a knee scooter and really started to get good at that thing. Fell off a couple of times. So needless to say, as like the provider, the breadwinner, the husband, the dad at the time, I was depressed, man. Like I fell into a deep depression. And once I finally got back on my feet and I was actually in my walking boot for the first time, we went to Costco. And it was February 2020. And the trade show was there. And so I had always been looking at them. I had always wanted a Traeger. It was always something that was just like top of my mind. Any time I had an opportunity to walk through Home Depot and look at them, like my wife knew, like we go to Home Depot, I'm stopping by the Traeger section,
Yeah, for sure.
And so we walk in and she looks at me and she's like, Traeger's here, just trying to get that smile out of me that she hadn't seen in a while. And I walk over and they had this cool dude. I think his name was Tony. He was like from Georgia and he was one hell of a salesman, and little did he know 75% of the job was done, but like he just sold me on it and I was trying to be modest and I picked up the Junior 22, and I brought it home and I did the Traeger chicken challenge and I failed tremendously because back then, as people always want to know how long does it take?
Yeah.
How long does it take? How long does it take? Right. And so that was a question I kept asking the guy. And he finally just blurted out like an hour. Right. And I'm like, okay, cool. I throw a whole chicken on the Traeger. I pull it out and it was raw. My mother-in-law literally took it, cut it up, threw it in a pot. And I was just like deflated,
Yeah.
But from that point on, I was like, you know what? I got to figure this out. And in March 2020 hits, I ended up spending a lot more time at home, feeding my family. Nobody's eating out. So it all kind of just came together perfectly. Like it's just crazy how you go through something in life and it kind of just molds this perfect situation to where Father Day came around that year. Everybody got me Traeger stuff, the cutting board, the pellet bin, and all that stuff. And then Hunnicutt's barbecue was born because I was like, you know what, like this is fun. My wife didn't want me posting a bunch of meat on my personal Instagram. She wanted to be about the kids because now I got 2 kids. And she's like, yo, like you got to post the family. You know, it's COVID, right? So we're at home, and she's like, you're spending time with us. Like, let people see that. So I'm like, okay. And Hunnicutt's barbecue was born, and best decision I've made so far.
Yeah, and it's crazy too because it always happens when you don't want it to happen, right?
Yeah.
And I tell people that like greatness happens in the midst of failure, in the midst of frustration, in the midst of fill in the blank, right? Like when you're at your worst is usually when the seed's planted, right? Like if you actually think about building crops, like that seed has to be planted in dirt and it has to die for it to grow. And so for us as human beings, like we have to die to ourselves to actually truly give into that next step, give into that next part of life. And, your story is the same as mine, where we just were like, we got to change, man. We got to figure this out. And yeah, it's our legs that gave out, and we were forced to sit down and not do anything, and forced
Yeah.
to reevaluate the situation. And it's rad to see even where you've grown since earlier this year to the middle of the year, just with conversations that you and I had on the car rides and in airports, and to see the expansion and the growth of who you are as an individual is a testament to who you are, and a testament to the power within you. And I don't know, to me, it's exciting. It's exciting to see your passion grow. It's exciting to kind of watch you develop. And I know that sounds
Yeah.
weird from a white man,
Yeah.
sitting here in the, far away in Southern California and just be like, I love watching you. But it's true, and it's honest, and it's encouraging, and hopefully, I can be there as a mentor for you and help you develop this continual skill. Just because dude, it's so rad to see you with your kids, cooking and out there, making food that is changing who they are at a core. And I know that you are working on your health, your wife's working on her health, and one of those
Hmm.
steps is taking your food to the next level and understanding the process within it. So it's dope, dude. So I appreciate that.
Nah,
Hold
yeah,
on, hold on,
appreciate that,
hold
man.
on.
I mean, obviously, our conversations we had was, like that trip to Montana really, I would say it changed my life. And I hope, I tell Ben that, I tell Traeger that because going out there, I really didn't know what to expect, and especially being in this world. When I got the call, I was just like, okay, Montana, and I started looking it up, and then I started getting like the you got to be prepared for the weather, and I'm like, not only is the weather gonna be different, but the people will be different, right? And so we both live in California, where we know like you can't go certain areas, you can't do certain things, you can't wear certain things. And I was like, here I am landing in Montana as a black man, where it's not a lot of us out there, and I had a little bit of like reservations and just kind of questions, because you always hear things about other places and you just never know. And I would say, meeting you at the airport and having you by my side driving in and then meeting Tim Montana, I mean, before he met me, my birthday was like 2 weeks before that. And he's like, I can't wait to meet you and celebrate your birthday with you. And I'm just like, that's the same energy we got met with when we got to the Wise River Club. And when we got to cook that Friday night was, I can't even put it into words because for the first time in my life for a long time, I felt like my color didn't matter. Where I came from didn't matter. Like those people just cared that we were there to feed them and to gather them around food. And it really changed my perspective because for so long, as a black man growing up in America, growing up in California, you kind of walk around with these guards and you're always vigilant because of the things we had to be taught to survive in the 90s in LA. Like, don't wear these colors, keep your hands visible when you stop by the cops and stuff like that. So when I got to Montana, you kind of helped me come out of my shell on that drive. And then once we got there, you just get your your words taken away by the scenery. And then the people was like, I can't even say it enough. You know what I'm saying? Like that first night where Tim's like, oh, we're gonna go a stone's throw away to the next restaurant and we're gonna eat at these people's restaurant. And we walk in and this lady has never met us and she's hugging us and kissing us on the cheek, like, hey, thank you for coming to support my family. And they just bringing out this phenomenal food. And it's like
That pizza was pretty stupid good. I ain't gonna lie.
it was it was just like everything. I'm just like, man, like there's hope for humanity, I guess. That's what Montana taught me, because here we are, a bunch of big barbecue dudes. We were like 12 deep. One, Michelle with us, and open arms everywhere we went, everywhere we went. And that was cool, man. That was cool.
Yeah, and I think for me on that trip too, it's sometimes I get so used to the culture of the barbecue and the hunting world that, and even again growing up in Southern California, my view on African Americans, on dark skinned individuals was completely different because I grew up in that Compton Paramount area where half my friends and people that were coming over were of different colors or different races, fill in the blank of what it was. California's a melting pot. And so for me, it wasn't, I could guarantee there are going to be some other people when they show up and there's this big old brother sitting there and you're like, oh, I got to drive with this guy. I got to. And for me, it was instant friendship and family, just for the fact that a person's a person. And I think, kind of what you said when we all got there is food is this equalizer. I say it all the time, that food literally equalizes everything and everyone around it, because if we don't eat, we die. And so it doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter what gender you identify as. It doesn't matter what if you're voting red or you're voting blue. Like when food hits the table and it's good food, like nothing else matter but that food on the table, and the story behind the food and the process of the food itself is all that matters. And I think the moment I saw a change in you, I know it's kind of silly, but you were still kind of quiet, still kind of is I was calling out geese, I was calling out ducks, and you're like, how the frick? How do you know what that? How are you seeing that? And then we pull around the corner, and there's a cow in the field, right? And your response was like, "Is that a cow? Is that a wild cow?" And I'm like, "Oh, what?" Like for you to see a cow, because again, you're from the inner city, right? Like you're not seeing cows in the wild. Like the joy on your face to see a cow. Jeremiah, stop! I gotta take a picture of this cow. There was a flip inside of you that was like, okay, this is going to be an adventure, and I'm on board. Like I still felt that reserve on that car ride. I still felt, even though you and I sat and had amazing barbecue, you still had this reserve when that, until that cow moment.
Yeah, that was cool, and I still tell people about that because, like, obviously around here, you used to like the milk cows and stuff like that. But that was the first time I seen like a wild Angus cow that was probably what, like 10 feet away from the car. That's why I'm like, wait a minute, like this is stuff you go to a zoo in LA for to see, but like this is literally on our drive down to where we're going, and it's just there, and it was a beautiful creature, it was just like, okay, and it was just taking it all in because, like I said, I didn't really start traveling until like the Traeger Summit a few years ago. I hadn't been on a plane in like probably like 7, 8 years, right? And so even like when you go to something like that, it was so structured to where like I have this joke with my wife because I'll go to places and I'll go to something like the Traeger Summit where we have an itinerary. And I'm like, yeah, I went to Utah, but I didn't go to Utah. And she's like, that's stupid. And I'm like, no, because like I didn't travel, I didn't do what we did in Montana, right? Like drive through 2 hours. Like I literally got off the plane, I went to what I needed to do, I got back on the plane, I came home. So I didn't visit that place. So for me, when we were driving, I was just like, this is beautiful. Yeah, like it was breathtaking. Like there was so many different like lakes and like you calling out the birds, like I was like, how does and it wasn't even like how does he know, but like, dude, you were calling out birds from like 200 yards out. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like
It's a
we're
problem.
on the freeway. We're on the freeway, going the speed limit, and it's a bird flies by, and you're like, not even just like, oh, that's a duck. Like you're like, well, that's like, Canadian geese. They about to leave. They about to, and I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
like, how is that even possible? But
Yeah.
yeah,
It's a problem. It's a problem I have. I get made fun of by my daughters all the time. Cause even here we're driving around. I'm like, oh, that's a mallard. Oh, that's a widgeon. Oh, that's a gadwall. They're like, Dad, it's a duck. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have a problem, but um, kind of let's kind of transition into this aspect of developing, Hunnicutt barbecue. And you and I were sitting and talking on the car ride home from that Montana trip, which was phenomenal. And I think you got a real taste of what it was like to work in a kitchen, not just in your back,
yeah,
not just in your backyard. And I was thrust into that role. And, at that weekend trip, it was like, oh, we don't have a cook and we don't have a chef. And so we don't know what we're doing. And it was literally like, Jeremiah, here you go. Um, and for you to step up as like a sous chef in that role, like was huge. Like, what was your thought on like actually seeing how a kitchen works for a 2 hour food service? Like, how did that change your mindset on food?
Man, it's crazy. So like obviously we watch food shows all the time. Hell's Kitchen, Master Chef, all those other things, and you kind of just all you know, right? Like when you've never been in it, that's the only thing you know. But I feel like for me, I was just really excited because that was like what day three of us kind of hanging out and just getting to know each other. So to me, it was like another cool thing that I was doing with my friends, and that's really what it felt like. And so to be in it, um, there's no greater feeling for a chef than the silence, the head nod, right? Like after you give someone their food, and for me, that took the cake, because having someone like you who's so much experience in the kitchen and really just like you're a great teacher, by the way. So it's like just taking the time, and I never felt like I was bothering you, which I really appreciated because you always took the time to kind of slow down and be like, okay, cool. This is how you cut this onion. This is how we gonna do this. Everything was more organized because I'm almost the opposite. My wife would tell you, like, I really need to get more organized. So to see you work, I felt real comfortable. And that's where the excitement came from. Cause like I said, it was like cool. Like I was taking pride in what we were doing because I love the Traegerhood. I love Traeger. And that's what we were there to do, was to represent the Traegerhood and to show people what we do. And then I got to meet Tim, who is a phenomenal person. And he's not a transplant that like just showed up in Montana. Like his name is Tim Montana for a reason, and he beamed about it the whole time we were there. Where it was like, this is his roots, this is where he's from, and he's back here to provide for his community. So for me, it was like a little bit of like pressure, like, dude, you got to represent, you got to put on for Traeger, for Tim, because this is his people, this is his bar. And at the same time, too, I was like, I love this. Like every time we brought out a plate and a ticket and you go out there, and they kind of showed it in a video where we serving tri-tip sandwiches and people would bite it and have the next person bite it. And that's like, you don't do that unless it's like next level. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? Like you don't share something that don't taste good. And just the looks and the feeling of it. Like I wanted more tickets. Like I was ready. I was like, I could do this all night, and that was an experience for sure.
I think a cool moment that night was service was wrapping up. There was an old lady sitting at the bar top. And I remember you walked out, and she, this old born and raised Montana lady, who probably hasn't seen a colored brother that many times, living in the middle of nowhere, Montana. And you walked out, and she goes, did you help cook this food? And you were like, yeah. She goes, oh my gosh. And she got up and she gave you a hug. And I remember you turned around and looked at me like almost with a tear in your eye, like, where the frick am I? And it was, for me, as somebody who was observing that from the outside, was powerful because, she looked past everything that you put on yourself, right? You've said it many times, like as a colored man, she didn't even see you as anything else but a person that cooked amazing food and was hanging out there blessing her. And I think to me, that was one of the highlights of the entire trip, was watching you turn around and look at me like, did this lady just hug me over a tri-tip sandwich? Like literally, did she just hug me over a tri-tip sandwich? Did she hug me over wings? Like, and I think, it was just that moment of you accepting who you are, that from the rest of the trip, even the ride home, like your thought process completely changed. And it was a powerful moment from myself on the outside looking in. I don't think I've talked to you about that yet, was just watching your persona change, watching who you were, as a husband, as a father, as a dad, as someone who has been hurt in their life, change over a bite of food. And to me, it was powerful. And it was a awesome moment that I just got to sit and cherish forever, because I just was in the background. I was hot. I was sweaty. I came around the corner with you, and you served that last food of the day, and that lady just loved you so much. So
It was, yeah, like I said, the whole trip was it was life changing. And I'm a California boy, and I've always heard people like, I want to move, I want to leave. And of course, it's always political, or they hate the governor and things like that. And I'm like, cool, but like, look at where we live. Like, you take all that away, look at where we live. And then I go out to Montana, which I probably could have named off 50 places that I wanted to go before I would have said Montana. Like
Yeah.
that's just what it is. And then I go and to experience what I experienced. I mean, I could probably drive around Montana for 2 days and just be in awe. And it. I still can't put it into words. Like I was just went back and watched that video that Traeger put together of the trip, just because it kind of just takes me back there, and it really was life changing, man. Because I remember walking into like the cabins, right, and the cabins that we ran, so people know, it's off to the left of the Wise River Club, and they're kind of newly built cabins. So from the outside, you're like, man, this is dope cabin. And you walk in, and there's literally a desk. I had 3 beds in my room for whatever reason, and a shower. There's no TV. There's like nothing crazy. Everything has to be done off the bar Wi-Fi because you have no signal. And so the first day I walked in, I was like, okay, like, all right. And then once you go out and you feel the freedom of being out in a place like that, where our distractions here in California, our phones, the TV, the internet, right? Like everything that we tap into to kind of distract ourselves and kind of go different places. I didn't need those things, right? Like when we were out there, I was just so like taken away by like the people and the conversations and like the views and like traveling 30 minutes to go to the grocery store and just the dope stuff we saw. Like that trip is, yeah, it's cemented in me forever. And I appreciate you sharing those kind words, because I definitely felt the change. I definitely felt the wall come down, because, it's just growing up in this world. It's like, you always like, you got to protect yourself, right? Like, you got to protect yourself. And I like to I have pretty bad anxiety. So I like to kind of know what I'm getting into, what the situation is. And so that was one of those ones where I had no control over anything, right? Like I didn't know where I was going. Me and you met for the first time. Me and Michelle were friends on Instagram for years. The first time we meeting in person. The first time I met Ben and hung out with Ben, like it was a lot of different variations. But at the end of the day, it was like, God put that trip together, and it couldn't have went any better.
For sure. Well, let's get into barbecue. Let's get into your favorites. Let's get into some of the things. Like I know you said start with you start out with that chicken challenge, and it failed. So what have what have you learned, in these 4 years since you have gotten that Traeger, and kind of what's your favorite things in barbecue that you can tell people? Because I know even joining meter, like understanding that it's temps not times,
Yeah.
which is huge for anybody that's cooking anything, not just barbecue. So kind of go into the progression of you learning that chicken, and now the crazy stuff you're throwing out there.
Yeah, the biggest thing and the most valuable lesson that I can put out there is that cooking with passion is a real thing. Cooking with excitement and love is a very real thing. And I say that as I feel like I did my son's birthday party last year, and I had this like anxiety of the people that were coming over, people that like, we've been seeing your food and we want to try it, and we want you to cook this and this. I'm like, okay. And I'm running around, we're getting this party ready, and the food didn't come out the way I wanted it to, because my mind wasn't in it. I was doing it because I felt like I had to do it, right? And I felt like I missed on every dish, right? And I definitely didn't get the reactions that I wanted either. Um, and that was one of the biggest lessons so far for me, was that cooking with love and passion and taking your time with it is probably the most important ingredient you could put in it. Because I witnessed it where like no matter how much no matter what you're using, if you're not putting that into it, it's gonna miss. And that's just what it is. That's the biggest thing. Um, and that was probably one of my favorite lessons so far, because it really taught me my value and who I am and what I'm doing, right? And what I mean by that is that day I felt a little pressure. Like it's my son's birthday. These people want this, and this, and like I kind of got out of my lane, and I was trying to do like 3 different racks of ribs in 3 different ways, and like I didn't like any of the way they came out. And so that was the most important lesson so far, you know. Number two is just really, I like to be like clay in this situation, where parts of me are starting to firm, right? That's who I am. That's part of my DNA. That's part of my foundation. But when I come across people like yourself, Chef J. Rob, Benny Kendrick, uh, Rosalie, Cast Iron Skills, like when I had those conversations, it's important to be able to take on those things as well, and let those pieces become part of who I am, not change the foundation of who I am, but become part of who I am.
Yeah.
And that's been my favorite part of it, right? Because we can continue to evolve and change in the culinary game because we are our own artists, essentially. And I feel like every piece of meat is a blank canvas and you can take it any route you want to go. Um, and so for me, that's what barbecue is about, right? Like if you go to a restaurant and the servers are not nice and the cook's not having a good day, it's not going to be good. It's
Yeah.
just not going to be. And for me, if you out there and you listening and you getting into it and you're learning, cook what's fun for you, right? Like, don't put yourself in this box to think that you have to follow what Jeremiah's doing, what Hunnicutt's doing, what anybody's doing, and especially since that's already being done. I think that's another big thing with being a content creator and being a barbecue person is we try to catch these trends, right? And we try to catch these waves so we can have a viral video. And I just don't do it. I just don't do it because it's not me. And that's what I've definitely been loving about barbecue is I can come out here in my backyard, do my thing, and I'm comfortable feeding my family because I'm like, either you like it or you don't. But this is what I tried today, and I hope you love it. And my wife is my biggest fan, my biggest critic, and I love her to death because I'm not the man I am today without her. Like she definitely has made me so much better than the person I was when she met me. Like she definitely met the inner city kid that was kind of lost, and she definitely helped me find my way. And that's what barbecue is for me. Like it's not so much about the meats and so much about the ingredients. It's about the passion in doing it. And I think that's why for me, I'm kind of stutter stepping on catering or I don't know, trying to do something like crazy, right? Like I would hate to do someone's 200-person wedding and fail, you know.
Yes. Yes, you would.
uh,
No, I mean, no, I agree, and I think that when you find your passion, when you find what you're excited about, everything else kind of falls in line, and it's scary and it's frustrating and it's, you know, to hear your story and to watch the process. Like I said, it's been cool, and it's been fun to even watch you progress. Go back and look at what you were doing, and even the text message that you send me, like, hey, here's chicken I'm working on. How's the video? And I'm like, well, this would be a more effective way to do this, and to watch you take that and grow. Where a lot of people in this industry are like, well, screw you. It's like you truly do, like you said, you're that clay. You want to be molded. You want the help in shaping, this beautiful pot at the end of the day that's not all full of holes and leaking. You really want to be the best that you are, and I think you're truly doing that. You're building your website, which is looking great. You're building up your brand more. I mean, you just hit a milestone in your followers. You're picking up,
yeah,
you're picking up really cool sponsors who are believing in you. And I think as someone who's creating content for a living, when you get companies and brands that believe in you, that's a pretty cool thing.
it's I could have never imagined. Like I still trip out on like projects I work on. I got some stuff coming. I just signed with Fulton Fish Company. Um, and it's crazy. Like I get these emails sometimes and I get so excited and I send them to my wife and just for like the mentorships, like talking to you, talking to Chef J Rob, Justin is phenomenal person as you guys heard on episode one. I can text him anything and he gets back to me. Because I'll get these emails that kind of just asks me to do things and I'm trying to learn my value now, right? Like
Yeah, that's what I
we
was talking to you about.
Yeah, the biggest thing is like when you get into this and people want to send you stuff, you're like, oh yeah, 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 yeah. But now, I'm to the point to where my time is valuable, right? And I have to take time away from my wife and my kids in order to do this. And they love it and I love it and I love the things that I've been able to accomplish. But now I'm building that foundation to where it has to make sense for me and my brand, right? And it's much like the text message I sent you the other day, just aligning myself with the right people, because now I'm getting to a situation where who I represent paints an image of me as well,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's the biggest thing right now for me. And learning these partnerships, like you said, when people believe in you, my conversation with Peter was probably one of the dopest conversations I've ever had. They were the first people to actually say, like, let's set up a Zoom meeting and an interview, right? We had a very real conversation about what they wanted, what I wanted. And I just looked at him. I said, hey, look, when it comes to followers, I'm not the biggest page. When I come to passion, engagement, and really giving people what they need, that's where I'm at. And so it was really that conversation where we had a phenomenal meeting, which obviously it ended in a good partnership. Where I was like, yo, okay, well, they understood my value, right? And it wasn't like at no point did I feel like I was overstepping or I was asking too much or saying too much. And now it's just to the point to where it's about leveling up, because I'm really looking at the people that I'm working with and seeing that the appreciation they putting back in me, because that's a real thing, right? Like I talk to people all the time. We're like, oh, this person sent you this or this person sent you that. And I had a couple of things that like I did in the past that I won't be doing anymore. Um, just because at the end of it, I was like, why'd I do that?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like it was bad, but it was like somebody sent me some product, was like, cool, we'll send you product for you to post a video. And I'm like, cool. Then I look at the value of the product and it's like a $10 rub. And I'm like, well, now my content's worth more than that. Like my time, my effort, the proteins that I bought for your rub cost more than your rub. And I think that's really where I'm at this year in 2024 is understanding that, my relationship with Traeger's phenomenal. My relationship with Meter within the first few months is phenomenal. And just some of the other partnerships that I have. And I just did a giveaway. And when I reached out to my partnership sales, like, let's do it. And when you can go out and create a $500 giveaway for just, hitting a milestone was a really cool feeling. And I just never know what the next step is for this.
Yeah. Well, stay humble and stay authentic is what I can tell you, because I remember the first $25 check that I got and I was like, dang, I made money on doing what I love. And now I look at the amount of money that that companies are utilizing for certain recipes, certain dishes, and finding your value and your worth. I know I talked to you about that on our drive too. It's like, how much are you worth, man? What is your time worth? And
Yeah.
you can't feed your family on free stuff. And so when you take a step back and actually look at the process and look at, if you're a painter and you take so many hours to do something, your painting costs this much money because of your value, your time. And us as creators, sometimes we get lumped in with those, big boobed influencers who are like, oh yeah, another product. Here we go. And they're getting paid their $100 and they're moving on to the next product. You, like myself, want to build a relationship, want to build a partnership with brands, and want to build a family. Like, we don't want a flash in the pan. We want to have, some of my longest sponsors are family, and have built family. Traeger's one of them, where I now look at the community that I have built within that. And those are some of the people that are foundational to who I am as a person, and who I am as a chef. And the text message I get from people who have millions of followers, hey, I'm curious on this, Jeremiah, that I don't know how to cook. And then I know I can turn around to that same person and be like, hey, so I'm cooking this for somebody and I have a question about this. And it's not oh my gosh, why are you asking me? It's we truly built this relationship and this brand. Same as the relationship with you and I. We would have never met if it wasn't for a stupid grill that drops
Yeah.
little rabbit food pellets into an auger and, produces smoke and then allows the meat to cook through that way. Like, we would have never met. There would never be this conversation. We would never have had a trip. But because brands believe in us and because we have a value on ourselves and being authentic to who you are, I mean, it's great to hear that you're getting rid of certain companies, because there's companies that have approached me and I have turned down thousands of dollars because I don't align with their brand. Now, they're phenomenal products. They're phenomenal this. They're phenomenal that. And they gave me a number that blew my mind, and I looked at who they were as a company and who they were supporting. And I was like, no, thank you. And, I've been asked to be on certain podcasts with people that I just don't respect. And it's like, I'm not. Yes, can that podcast that gets millions of views change my life? 100%. But at the end of the day, I don't want my life changed if I gave up my values and my core self. So yeah, that text message that that you sent me the other day, and it was something that you were struggling with, and it was a real authentic moment that you and I were able to discuss and and figure that out. So that was huge, for that step. So
Yeah, it's been fun, man. And anybody out there that's listening, just getting started, man, keep going. It's just keep doing it. If you love it, it'll work itself out. And that's just really what I've learned. If you put yourself in a situation where you can, just continue to do what you're doing, because authenticity takes you so much further than anything else. And that's just some of the biggest lessons I've learned just in life in general. During the week, I'm a banker and I'm pretty successful at what I do. And that's the same answer I give people, right? Like when I'm talking to people about their lives and their finances, I'm just me. I work for an amazing manager that's accepted me for who I am and knows Marcus is going to be Marcus regardless. And I've been lucky enough to say that success has come with it, right? Because my customers know when they come in and they see me, Marcus is going to be real. He's going to give me the honest. He's not going to give me the company motto, the scripted, and authenticity. You can't buy it, right? Like you just can't, in a generation of AI, you can't buy authenticity,
dude,
right? Like
I'm so sick of fake AI pictures of food and recipes that are flooded Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or X, whatever the heck it's called now. Everything is fake, and it's like you can tell from that fake. And you're seeing these, there's this one lady that tagged me in something, or this one bot. I'm not gonna say a lady. 400,000 followers. She has 100 posts that are all AI generated food. You could tell they're AI because it's like, and people are just following it because they want that fakeness. And it's like, dude, I don't really care. I'm gonna put out what I put out, and it irks me that we spend so much time being authentic, and somebody can come in and just be like, hey, look at this food, and then they type into Chat GPT like, give me a recipe for collard greens, and it pops out a recipe, and now give me a picture for that recipe, boom, and boom, here you go, look at, and it's like, and they're selling themselves as authentic, and it's just disgusting.
It's crazy. We battling AI, we battling the boobs, the bikini,
dude,
the bikini cooks.
You and I got great boobs. Just
great boobs.
Nobody wants
great
to
boobs.
see them. Nobody wants.
Yeah,
they're
not following them. They're not following. They're not following these middies for sure.
Let's do a calendar. Let's do dark chocolate, white chocolate. Just you and me with boobies, and we'll just hold barbecue with just our boobs and just chocolate, white chocolate.
Just laying on grills,
laying on grills with
letting it happen.
Have a tomahawk out of your mouth. No, we'd probably get banned on everything. No, and the only two people the only two people that would buy it is our wives, just to burn them.
Yeah, make sure nobody else had it.
Actually, they're like, no, let's let everyone else see what we have to deal with. But all right, so there's 5 questions that was reached out on social media, asked all the followers to kind of give out what they would ask a chef for a summer cookout, since that's the series, is the summer cookout series. So I'm going to throw out these 5 questions. You've listened to the other podcast. You already know the questions.
Yeah.
So if you get them wrong, there's no one to blame. There's no one to blame. Hold on, wait. Nope, wrong one. There we go. That's my
There it is.
My
there
soundboard. I've never ever used that soundboard in the 150 podcasts that I've recorded, and now I have. So
there you go. Dust it off, man.
So question number 1. What is your go-to dish you bring to a summer cookout? So Marcus, you're coming over to my house for a summer cookout. What you bringing?
Ooh. I actually got this dish that I've been working on. I actually got the opportunity to serve it at Traeger Day a couple of years ago. It is a honey chipotle bacon wrapped shrimp.
Yeah, you told me about this
that I'm working on perfecting, and so I definitely serve it up anytime I can to get honest reviews. But that's what I'm pulling up, man. It's a beautiful sauce that I blend: garlic, honey, chipotle peppers, adobo sauce, and I ain't gonna give y'all more than that because I'm working on it. But that's definitely my go-to right now. It does really well. Unfortunately, if you have a seafood allergy, I'm sorry. If you don't eat pork, sorry. But that's what Hunnicutt's pulling up right now. The honey chipotle bacon wrapped shrimp right now. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember you telling me all about that, and you were like, you were like, well, what can I do? Like, it didn't work this way or this way. And so, yeah, I'm excited to one day pop one of those little shrimpy shrimps in my mouth.
Gotta do it.
What is your most memorable cookout memory that you have? So I know you did a lot of cookouts around that family barbecue at grandma's house. Like, what is that one that just sticks out in your mind?
Man, the number one actually would be a summer barbecue. It was the first time that my in-laws got to come with me. And so I'm a very inclusive person where it's like, if you know me and you're gonna be there, I want you to be there. Right. I want everybody to feel welcome. And so it was the first time that my when we were living out in LA, they were coming down for the weekend. We had got this invite. And of course I called my family and I was like, hey, if they coming down, it was like, of course. And so we had the pool. We did like carne asada, and it wasn't really about the food, but it was just about my family's getting together for the first time and the full capacity, right? Like, because every time we have something here or there, not everybody can make it, but that was the first time everybody was in the same place at the same time. And it was another one of those moments where everybody just loved on each other and it didn't matter who was who. And that's what the cookout's about, you know?
Yeah. And your wife's Hispanic, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, how cool is that to have, just that blending come together and have fun. And like, that's awesome. Um, what are some essential must-haves for summer cook-offs? You're out there in your backyard right now. You've got your flat top. You have your pro. What are some go-tos people need out there for summer cook-offs?
Number one, like I said, we got to have a proper thermometer. Obviously, I represent meter. Um, you got to know your temps. You know what I'm saying? And when people asking you how much longer, tell them when it get done. you know, positive vibes. When it comes to a cookout, positive vibes. Bring them yourself and know who else is gonna bring them because there's nothing worse than bringing people with a crappy attitude to a cookout. Because outside of that, it don't matter what you're cooking. It don't matter what activities you got going on because if you bring solid people together that are going to sit there and converse for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, it doesn't really matter. Like that's going to be the most memorable thing is good people and stuff to make sure your food's cooked,
Yeah, for
But
sure.
outside of that, protein of choice and get after it. Obviously, if you can get a Traeger out there, do that too. But
Yeah. What is your go-to side dish or dishes? Like, what is? Hey, I got the meats covered. Like, what is your go-to side dish that you're popping and bringing out?
ooh, man, I've always had a thing for barbecue beans. I've
Mm.
always had a thing for them. And then Skid and Benny Kendrick had made them at Traeger Day a couple years ago, and I can't stop making them the way that they make them. So chorizo, bacon, Bush's baked beans, your favorite barbecue rub, some barbecue sauce, and you smoke that to get that nice smoky flavor. And that's one of my favorites, man. I like to throw bell peppers and onions in there too, just to give it a little bit more oomph in it. But that's definitely what I'm bringing. Um, I feel like mac and cheese is overdone. I love mac and cheese, but I feel like it's definitely overdone. And now so many people don't do dairy, so barbecue beans would be the way to go.
Oh, and barbecue beans are one of my love languages. And I get asked to bring them all the time. People are like, bring your beans. And I'm like, oh, there's so much work.
Mm-hmm.
But it is one of those dishes that, oh man. And it's to the point you get sick eating them. Like, and even around my house, my family is like, oh, make some beans. And I'm like, do you know the process to make beans? Like, let's just get a can of beans. Like, no, Dad, make beans. It's like, all right. So that's right. I have not tried Kendrick's and theirs with the chorizo. I'm gonna have to do that because
It's good, man.
I usually do like homemade sausages, throw that chop that up in there, just to add that extra big old chunks of meat. I'll homemade sausages, char it up, and then chop it up and throw it in there, and you got that charred homemade sausage that nothing beats a homemade sausage. All right. And the last question, I have had a million different answers. I don't think one person has been exactly the same. I've been able to give some tips and tricks along the way. What is your tip for the perfect burger? If you were making a burger for that grill, I know you've listened to everyone else's, so
Mm-hmm.
who this is authenticity. What are Mr. Hunnicutt's tips for the perfect burger?
My biggest tip would be to know your equipment. That's the big. That's number one, right? Because depending on what I'm cooking on, that's how I'm gonna cook it. But outside of that, I'm a one flip person. So that's why it comes down to knowing your equipment, because if you flipping your burger too many times, I can't get behind that. I can't get behind that. Especially like if we're doing it on the flat rock, I like to make sure that the flat rock's nice and hot. And I like my burgers seared hard because I like a pink middle. So I do like that crust. I like salt, pepper, garlic, nothing else on my burgers. And then you got to choose the right cheese. The right cheese is probably just as important as the quality of beef, as you guys have covered, right? But I feel like if you get it hard seared with the right seasoning and you only flip it once, that's it.
So the one flip is one thing that I push on so many people, because the more you flip it, the more it dries out. And so getting that one flip. Okay, but you said the perfect cheese. So what is your Mr. Hunnicutt's go to queso on that hamburguesa?
So
I'm gonna laugh at you if it sucks, because you just said it has to be. If you're like, oh,
no, no, well,
craft singles, it's the only way it melts out perfect. Then I'll be like, dude, shut up. You said goat
nah.
cheese.
It's gotta be. I like to go to Von's Deli and I like to get my cheese cut fresh when I do burgers, and I like a really good quality American cheese. Right, Kraft singles is just like, I won't lie to you and say I don't grab it, because if I'm doing like a party or something, you getting Kraft singles, I'm not dealing with that. Right, it's just bam bam go. But I like a good American cheese on my burger. But I also am like a burger connoisseur, where I can eat a burger every day. And with that being said, it just needs to be top different. Like, I'm a huge fan of like the Hawaiian burger with the grilled pineapple. So that's gonna be like a white cheddar to go with that pineapple, kind of set it off, right? But if I'm just going classic burger, like pickles, tomatoes, onions, lettuce, then I'm gonna go with that American. Might even double up on the smash burger with the double cheese. Then it's a wrap, and you might throw a little barbecue sauce on that. So it just all depends. But yeah, definitely if you want to do a burger right, get some cheese from the deli. Don't get that prepackaged stuff. Get that stuff just sliced right in front of you. And just flip one time. Flip one time. If you flip it more than one time, that tells me you don't know your grill or you don't know how to cook no burgers.
Yeah. Don't play with your meat so much. You're gonna go blind. You're gonna go blind if you play with your meat too much.
For real.
At least that's what I was always told. I don't know about you, but awesome, dude. Well, hey, I greatly appreciate you coming on and taking the time to chit chat. I know it's your first podcast. You killed it.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
Tell everyone out there in the ether world where they can find Mr. Marcus Hunnicutt, and where they can join this journey that I'm proud to be a part of, and watch, and watch you grow. Where can they watch and develop this as well?
I appreciate it. So Hunnicutt, HUNNICUTT, sbarbecue.com. Purchase that. Thanks to my friend, Mr. Jeremiah
in an
here, right?
airport in the middle of Montana, baby.
In an airport. I would tell you that moment. I still tell people about that moment, because um, that really solidified our friendship for me. Because just like real quick, uh, we were already going our separate ways, right? Like, you're going to your gate, I was going to my gate. You had TSA pre-check, I didn't, right? Like, you had already been sitting there, and I go to find you, and at that moment, I was already questioning, should I go find you? Just because I was like, you know what? Like, we've been together 3 days. I don't want to bug this guy. He's already like going home to his family. He don't want to see me again. And I walk up to you and you flip your computer screen around and you're like, your website's available. And to me, that was such like a heartwarming, meaningful moment for me, because here I was questioning whether or not should I bother you anymore. And you're still thinking about my progression, right? Like, that wasn't something you had to do. You're like legit, and you're like, where's your debit card? And I'm like, holy shit, you know?
Yeah.
And then you're like, hey, and then I'm going to check in on you. And you checked in on me like, hey, I want to know the progress of your website. So that meant a lot. But so honeycuttsbarbecue.com, honeycutts_BBQ on Instagram is where I get most of my stuff. TikTok is slowly but surely building up. But yeah, that's where I'm at. That's where you can find me.
Yeah. And I appreciate the kind words, because literally I was sitting there and I go, because we were talking about your website and you're like, yeah, I'll do it when I get home. I'll figure it out. It's something I've been hemming and hawing about. And I sat down and I'm looking at it and I type it in and I'm like, it's available. I was going to buy it for you and just like send it over. And then I see you walking up, and that's literally, I was like, dude, where's your money? Like, we're buying you this. It's it's dirt cheap. And you were like, seriously? And I'm like, yeah, let's get this going. And to go look what you're, how you're developing it, it's awesome. But I'm the kind of guy, like I told you in the beginning, it's let's do it. If we're going to do it, if you walk past something that's dirty, clean it up. If you walk past clothes that are on the ground, throw it. If you have the time to walk past it, you have the time to do it. And that's really kind of where it went. But yeah, go give this guy a follow, man. And it's not Honey, Honnes, or Y or whatever it is. It's Hunnicutts. So like Hunnicutt with 2 T's. So make sure that you go give this guy a follow, because literally it's fun to watch him grow. He's pumping out killer barbecue stuff that half the stuff I can't eat because it's freaking cow meat. But the chicken, the ribs, all the other good stuff. Give this guy a follow, because you will not be disappointed. But again, dude, seriously, I thank you for our friendship. I thank you for your authenticity and your willingness to continue to grow and shape the industry with just a grill and a flat top. So I truly, truly am grateful, and I hope you feel that for you coming on and hanging out and talking for an hour. So
I appreciate it. My first podcast. You always can do it the first one time, and I'm glad I was able to do it with you. So I appreciate it.
Yeah. And so for everyone listening, just make sure you go check them out. Make sure that you get a good thermometer. Just make sure you have fun. And until then, my friends, go listen to all the rest of these podcasts, because they've been pretty killer. So we'll talk to you later.